Hello, everyone. Welcome back for the fourth Tadaima Fine Art Friday Artist Talk. Today's artist is photographer Shane Sato. But before I introduce him, I'd like to talk about the annual camp pilgrimages. Tadaima was created because the COVID-19 pandemic forced all of this year's pilgrimages to be canceled. While it's been great to see all the participants, both the presenters and the viewers, there is nothing like actually going to a pilgrimage to the site, to meet new people, to see old friends, and to hear from the people who survived the camps. In fact, many of the people involved in bringing you to Tadaima met one another at a pilgrimage. One such meeting of mine was with today's artist. I met Shane at the 2018 Minidoga pilgrimage. This was soon after his book, The Go for Broke Spirit, was released. I had seen the book at my father's house. I was taken aback by the photos of the men and their stories. As a former photography professor, one of the things I tried to communicate with my students was that it is easy to capture what the person looks like. It is hard to create a portrait to give the viewer a sense of who the person is. What makes them an individual is most important. By doing so, the viewer will develop a memorable connection to that person. Shane's photos do just that. I can see the pride, the humility, the honor, and unfortunately, the sadness in their faces. He got me to want to know what they were thinking when that photo was being taken. Shane Sato spent most of his career working in publicity and advertising in the United States and Asia. He has worked in many aspects in the Asian American community, photographing for movies, magazines, and events for over 30 years. He's been photographing portraits of Japanese American World War II Nisei veterans since 2000, starting with the Go for Broke series, and has been working with oral historian Robert Horsting to further tell the stories of the World War II veterans, as well as veterans from subsequent wars. The portraits and stories of these men were published in the books The Go for Broke Spirit, Portraits in Courage, Volume 1, and The Go for Broke Spirit, Portraits of Legacy, Volume 2. It is my pleasure to introduce Shane Sato.
Hey, John, thanks a lot. What a great intro. I want to thank Tadaima for allowing me to come on the program. It means a lot to me because my family, the Yasudis, were at Horsting, and to talk about the camps and share these stories about the veterans is very important to me. So I've been taking these photos for the past 20 years, and it's been a long journey. I've taken photos from Los Angeles to Hawaii to Seattle to Chicago, and it's been a very exciting time. And it finally come to fruition with the set of 2 books. So I'd like to share a video with you right now that kind of gives you an overview of what we've been doing, as well as the stories about the Nisei veterans. So take a look.
I've been working on this project for the past 20 years. It's probably the hardest thing I'll ever do in my life. For me, this project is to help other families to talk like my family never had the chance to.
Good. And nice smile again.
If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then Shane Sato's are for words never spoken.
Look at you.
Yep. Look at me. Good. Okay, Shig, you're looking right here. A little more. Good.
For years, he's been taking portraits of World War II veterans from the famous 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the 100th Battalion, and the Military Intelligence Service. Those Japanese American troops who courageously fought for the same country that had imprisoned many of them and their loved ones. And while most of us have heard their stories, their families have not.
My family, we never spoke very much. We didn't talk. My mom's side, I knew they went to camp. My mom would always say, oh, it's not a big deal. I was young. It didn't bother me too much. My dad would just not really say much. You know, as a kid, I started to believe that. I thought, oh, okay, it wasn't that important. History is not important.
History was lost on Shane. You see, after the war, it was common for the next generation of Asian Americans to assimilate, to blend in at all costs.
Your friends, as they board the bus to leave the center, are going to new experiences and to a better way of living.
I didn't think of myself as Japanese. I just thought of myself as American. I thought that every kid ate Swanson TV dinners and chicken pot pies. I do remember when I was in about the 4th or 5th grade, I was doing a school report on Japan. The teacher said, oh, Japanese, it's too many syllables, so just abbreviate it to Jap. I brought that paper home to my mom, and she looked at it, and she was really mad, and I couldn't figure it out. So I asked her, Mom, why are you so mad? It's just Jap. It's just a very bad word. You should never say that, nor should it ever be taught. And I said, why? What's wrong with Jap? Why can't I say it? Jap, 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 Jap. And she just went ballistic and said, that's what they said. That's what they called us when they took us away to camp. And I remember my focus changed then, and I said, camp? What's camp? How come I didn't get to go to camp? And she said, you don't want to go to camp.
So when an opportunity to photograph these fading heroes arose, Shane took a chance. Over time, he noticed a change in himself. The more pictures he took, the more he understood his family's struggle for acceptance in America. History finally began to weigh on him.
For me, it really strikes a chord because their story and the history is part of my family. To have to prove that they were loyal Americans to a country who actually put them in prison just because they were Japanese. Could I do that? And I have to say, I don't know if I could do that.
What's special about this book is that the pictures are mixed with those unspoken words, those stories and emotions many of the veterans kept just to themselves until now.
Right there. All right.
Is it on?
Yeah.
The Medal of Honor ribbon.
You know, for Christ's sake, I haven't seen you in a long time. We're joining the army again, I guess.
For the veterans, this is one last chance to put on their uniforms.
Can't believe that he's gained so much weight and nothing fits.
The fact that Jimmy came, I was super excited because I knew that would be the last time he ever puts on his colonel uniform. And he said he gained weight. He just got out of 10 cancer treatments. So he's eating well, which made me really happy that it didn't fit him.
This one fits.
This one does fit, yeah.
This is going to be good.
Oh, this is
his jacket.
wow, that's great.
Once they had the uniforms on, it did change their persona. It did change how they felt.
Put it on. You forgot how heavy they were, didn't you?
It seemed like they were back in that time. They felt that pride, and they definitely had that strength. It showed a different side to them that they don't always show everybody. These are Nisei, Japanese men. Luckily, I'm able to somehow draw some of these emotions out. Otherwise, they would all just stand there motionless.
Pull that in through there.
We were up to his room, and I said, well, that's a Class B uniform. You can wear that. He says, yeah. I think he was real proud to put it on.
The race against time for them to see the book is definitely now.
Frank Muramatsu, son of Sugoi.
Not long after his book was published, Shane was able to give his book to veterans and their families. The impact was immediate and profound.
Oh, I feel very proud. A little sad too. I miss him a lot.
The picture shows him perfectly. That's Frank.
That's when I used to be.
It's very meaningful, especially these older guys. I consider myself young at 91. It's a good way to preserve history.
I hope that we learn from our mistakes of the past, and internment and anything that's close to that never happens again. This happened just 70 years ago. History can repeat itself if we don't continue and remember these stories. Many Nisei fought and died for my future. They went go for broke. And now it's my turn to carry the torch and help the younger generations remember them and keep their spirit alive.
Wow. You know, Shane, every time I see that video, it still gets to me. It's so powerful. And you know, I've had the pleasure of actually, since we have both your books, to be able to look through them and just see in their face, just see their stories, and it's just phenomenal. And so, first off, thank you for doing the project. I know as a photographer, when you work on long projects, it's both rewarding and frustrating, and I imagine that the rewards have just been incredible. And so, as a photographer, probably one of the things I get most often in Artist Talk is the question, you know, how did you start this project? So I'm going to ask you, how did you start this project? What made you decide to do this?
All right. Well, first off, I'd like to give a shout out for the video, which won an Emmy, by the way, in the Northwest region. Randy Ng shot and produced it, and Lori Masakawa narrated it. So I have to give a big shout out to them for that video. So I started this project over 20 years ago, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I spent a lot of time doing publicity and advertising here in Los Angeles. And during that time, obviously, there was not a lot of Asian role models. There was not a lot of good publicity for Asians that I saw on the media. And so I tried to change that by doing my own personal art, which was I did a series of Asian American actors. And then I started to photograph other things that I liked, as well as these veterans. So I started to do a project probably around 1999. And then around 1999, we first decided that we're going to start taking some photos of the veterans. And at that time, they wanted to wear their white uniforms or go for broke outfits, their club outfits. And as you know, as a photographer, wearing white is a photographer's nightmare. So what I tried to do is, for that particular project, I had them stand against a white background, so your focus is not on the white shirt, but then on their face. And then because of that as well, they're wearing the white shirt. Everything tries to go focused onto the white shirt. But I try to therefore bring out some of their personality to add to a very stark white environment. We photographed in Los Angeles, Seattle, and Honolulu over the next 3 years. And I think I got maybe 50 portraits, maybe 60 at that time. And it was probably the most anyone's ever photographed the Nisei veterans. That was probably finished around end of 2000, something like that. Yeah.
So when you were working on this project, were there any unforeseen difficulties, any issues that came up that you really had not expected?
Well, I was a much younger photographer then, and I thought, oh, everyone's just going to jump at this chance and want to participate and take their picture. And I should have known from my own family experience that a lot of these men didn't want their picture taken. I was lucky when I first started this project for that particular project with the white background. All those veterans were found for me, and so a lot of those ones were gotten from me in different areas. So it was something that was already planned for me. So that was much easier. As I continued the project in 2005 or 2006, and I started to personally ask them myself, that's when it became much more difficult. And when I decided to change the project, I didn't obviously want to photograph them in the white uniforms anymore. People did not know who they were. They didn't know what Go for Broke meant. And so I really wanted to, if I continue that project, I really wanted to show other people, not just Japanese people, who the Nisei were, who these veterans were, and what Go for Broke meant. So I decided to try and photograph them in their own clothes. When I did that in 2005, showed some people, and then they looked at it and they go, "Oh, you know, what a nice grandpa," or, you know, "Who's that, you know, old, very cute man," or something. You know, their own plaid shirts or members only jackets or something like that. It just didn't resonate for what I wanted to do. So I remember a lot of my friends during the Nisei Week parades here in Little Tokyo, they would ride in the Jeeps and they had their uniforms and they would do reenactments. So I thought, well, maybe I could try and get them to take some of the photos in the actual clothes. When I did that, I was able to get a much different reaction from the people I showed it to. Now they understood that these were men from World War II and that they fought in the war. However, they still did not, many did not know who Go for Broke was or who these veterans were.
So, you know, we've been working with Robert Horsting on doing oral history and video taping these men. Is this a result of that, of part of the educational part of your project to give them more of an insight, or was it just more to get in their voice, get more information about them out?
Well, Robert is our historian, so he's the one that really does the history and follows up on that. I am the photographer, and I really try and get the visual aspect and try and get the stories that I particularly want. Robert does his own videos for various subjects, and not only did he do it for himself, but he also did it for the Go for Broke National Education Center, and he also did it for his own personal work. Those same interviews, if I did take the photograph of the men, we did use a lot of those same interviews for the book, as well as the new videos and personal interviews that I conducted myself, and the stories that we wrote together for the book. So in the book, there's probably about, Robert and I have about an equal share in the stories. We'd have different styles, but we really try and bring a personal aspect to each of the veterans whenever possible.
Okay, great. So where have, like, as far as the show goes, where has this been shown so far?
Well, Oahu, Maui, San Jose, which it's still there, but it's unfortunately closed because we can't be there. Colorado, right here at JACCC last year, along with a portrait of your dad that we did along with the War Memorial Court, and that was a very interesting show as well. But yeah, we had other places already planned this year, but unfortunately they are all postponed.
Yeah, that's working in a museum. I know it's terrible, but hopefully that we'll be able to pick up where we left off once we can start getting outside. So I think the most intriguing part to me in the camp experience has been the fact that the story of the people in the 442nd coming out of the camps and leaving behind their family and their friends behind the barbed wire to go and fight for this country that has imprisoned their family and friends. And so I was wondering, were there any interesting stories that the vets had about that? Did they relate that feeling towards you at all?
You know, there's always been different kind of stories, but a lot of them did not talk about camp with me, or how they had to leave. We heard a lot of stories from about the 100th who obviously didn't have to go to camp. My parents, for some reason, the veterans or the people that I've experienced that have gone to camp, they really want to cut out that part of their lives. They talk about when you ask them, but they really kind of dodge that question, at least in the ones that I've done. I do know that a lot of them came out of all the camps, especially Minidoka. My family was from Hawaii, so they didn't have to go to camp on my dad's side, but my uncles fought in the 100th, and so they came over from Maui and Oahu. But I just can't imagine. I always ask this question. I don't know if my family was in prison, if I could fight for that country. I just don't know if I could.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's just really, it's amazing. So, was wondering, what was for you one of your most memorable shoots?
Well, there obviously is a lot of memorable shoots, but I think one of the more recent ones that we did in 2019 really strikes a chord. It was a veteran that we photographed when we went to Denver, Colorado, and his name was Dick Momey. Unfortunately, he just passed away a few months ago. But that portrait, I remember, and maybe we can get that one up now, was done in a church. And as we know, Colorado is very cold, and it was December. And the heater happened to break, of course, that same week that we arrived. So it was very cold in there. And like I said, a lot of the veterans not always are real excited to participate at first because they don't know what everything is all about. And here's Dick. And he wasn't one of those ones that really didn't want to be there. I was in another room doing another photo shoot with another veteran, and he's like apparently causing trouble with some of the other ladies who are trying to keep him there. And he's saying, you know, why am I here? It's cold. Let me get out of here, and things like that. And you know, one of the ladies comes running into the room and says, Shane, you better come over right away because this guy wants to get out now. He's going to escape. And so, okay, put down my camera. I walked over there and I started to talk to him, and you know, he's like, you know, what do you mean I have to put on this uniform and this and that, you know? And you know, nobody told me. I'm pretty sure they did, but he just wanted to leave. But he basically, I'm working in Hollywood, working with celebrities and things. A lot of times, you only have a few minutes. You have to be real quick thinking. And I immediately started thinking, what are your hobbies? And he says, oh, you know, I used to box. And I said, oh, you know, can show me some stances. And he showed me this stance right here like this. And, you know, I said, I bet you really want to hit me right now. He goes, yeah. I go, okay, give me your best punch. And then we got this shot right here. Coming up. There you go. So after that, he gave me that punch and he relaxed and he was happy after that. He was much more willing to do the shoot, put on the clothes, and he spent some time with us. And amazingly enough, this became the cover for the second book. So no matter how something starts out, you really don't know what you're going to get until after the shoot. And so I was really happy that this became our cover photo for the second book. Unfortunately, he passed away before I could personally give him his book, but he did see the portrait right before he passed away, and his family's very happy for it. And I'm very happy. It's one of my favorite shots.
Wow, that's a great story. You know, this is, you know, for those of us that are photographers and photograph people, this is one of the great things about doing it is we get this amazing insight, amazing stories, amazing connections with the different people. since you mentioned that Dick has recently passed away, Boston Sakai recently passed away also. And so I was just wondering what it was like photographing him, because you photographed him also.
Yeah, you know, it's really sad that, you know, Lawson was obviously a cornerstone of the community. Everybody knew who he was. And when I first saw him, I didn't think he was a World War II veteran, because he looked like a GQ, you know, senior citizen model. Yeah, he was in really great shape. Maybe we can go to that particular photo right now. That is not it, but it's but I met Lawson. This is it right here, and you can see the obvious good looks right here. And he had no problem putting on the uniform, and it fit him well, and he obviously looks great in it. He is actually in the main part of the room in San Jose, because that's where he is from. I just wanted to share that last year I had the opportunity to go to France on one of the last pilgrimage to see the areas where they fought in France, and Lawson was there, kind of telling us about it, you know, going through the different memorials, the city and the mayor and everyone came up to him. My wife speaks French, and so there was one lady that grabbed my wife off to the side and told her in French that she really wanted to thank Lawson, and because she felt that she's one of the last people to be there from that time. And she really made it a point to be there so she can personally thank Lawson. And that was very touching to see that happen. So it was a great honor to be there in France with Lawson. I'll never forget it. And we just unfortunately lost him, but I'll never forget all that time we spent out there in France.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. Here at the museum, we're working on a project which I'm not going to go too much into, but involved a long interview with Lawson, and it'd be exciting when that finally comes out. Another photograph you have of is with Wat Misaka, and I'm glad you had the basketball, because that is what he's famous for. But many of our viewers may not know the story of Wat and how important he was to athletics in America and to the Japanese American community.
Yes, you know, I rarely like to use props, but for Wat, I just had to do it. He was the only one that I usually, for myself, it was very difficult for me to go just to photograph one veteran in an area. But Wat, I obviously made an exception for, because I felt he was so important. You know, the community is small and tight, but my family, my dad had a bowling supply. And so I always said that there's three things that all JAs do, being Sansei: played basketball, went fishing, and we bowled. That's mostly the Nisei, but we were all doing those things growing up. My dad had a bowling supply, and so they would travel to different areas at the Jamba tournaments to go to bowl in these tournaments. And so everyone knew Wat, not as a basketball player, but as a bowler. So he's actually in the Janum Hall of Fame as a bowler, because he was one of the ones who really started the Janba, and one of the pioneers, I guess. It's obviously before my generation when I bowled, but it's amazing that not a lot of people knew that bowling with him all these years, know that he was one of the that he played basketball. He played on the Knicks. He was the first person of color to play in what would become the NBA. All these things, because he was so humble. He never would talk about. He would never share that. And so, you know, later on, obviously people would know and come up to him and sign autographs. And I have that basketball right there signed by him now, and it's one of my treasures. He was very humble. He was great to be with. We had our show in with the Go for Broke National Education Center in Utah sometime last year, right before he passed away. And so it was one of the last times, I think it was the last time I saw Watt, and we were able to have take a portrait with him standing next to his portrait in the library, and that was really nice. But his life is amazing, and yeah, I hope to keep telling that story.
Yeah, was it hard to get him to talk about himself, or once he got going, then it got easier?
Once he got going, it got easier, but he would never mention it. You would never know. I mean, obviously he's 5'7", yeah. You say, oh, look at this, and he played on the Knicks. You would just not believe that. And so yeah, I always use that as one of my trivia questions that I always win at.
Okay. So what would be what you consider be one of your favorite shot of this whole series? I know it's hard. It's like picking, favorite kid, but what might be your favorite?
Well, being, I try to be artistic with the photos that I do. And I know that these are portraits. I know that they're representing of the Nisei soldiers, but whenever possible, I try and sneak one in there that I feel is kind of a little bit more artsy, if you will. And this is Mas Suida. And if we can go to his portrait, this is a sepia tone print. What I really liked about Mas is his story is that he's a fisherman, commercial fisherman. And I don't know if you have any family members, maybe from back in the day with Fish Camp in San Pedro, but this is hard work. And so their hands are always working. They're working the nets, they're out in the sea. This deadliest catch is really what's going on with them. And a lot of the Japanese men, that's how they made their living, is by going fishing. And by going fishing every day, you could see the ruggedness in their body and their demeanor. This guy, he was a tough guy. And I really wanted to show his hands and the quietness of his body. So I just had him clasp his fingers like this, and he, put his hands in there, and I just asked him, just relax and close your eyes. And that's what he did. And I really think I got a nice somber moment with him. It is definitely one of my favorite shots, showing the strength of his hands as well as the relax and calmness of his face.
And I think even just little details like the droop of the shoulder, and it just adds to that. It gives a sense to me, a sense of a weariness, but a calm to it. And these men lived incredible lives, and and for many of you caught them very, very close to the end of their lives, or the point where they can look back and hopefully take pride in their accomplishments of what they did. They were so responsible for so much.
There was another side story to that one too, John. The exhibition that we had at the JACCC. This portrait was up, and we asked Mas or Mas's family if they would want to bring him up, and pretty much all of them said, "Oh no, he's not going to come. He just turned 100. He just had his 100th birthday. There's no way he's going to want to come. He's going to be too tired." But when he found out he's going to be in the show, he goes, "No, I want to be there." So amazingly, they drove him up that day, and he came out, and I think they had a little. I think he told the crowd he was 100, and everyone was saying happy birthday to him. So I think he had a great time, and the whole family, I believe, was really excited that he wanted to come out and that he was able to make it. I mean, 100 years old, right?
Oh, that's amazing. Wow. And also aside for you photo geeks, this is just beautiful lighting. I am just absolutely blown away by your lighting to capture the character on his face. Just fantastic. But you're asking, you know, talking about being a fisherman. Where do you remember? Do you remember where he actually was from? Where he fished?
He fished in San Diego, and he pretty much lived out his life in San Diego. He ended up going to Horsting, I believe. I'm not positive on that, but I think he's one of the ones that end up going to Horsting. Or I think if it's not him, there's about 3 of the veterans that I went to San Diego to photograph. He might have been drafted right into the Army or volunteered right into the Army right at that time. Sorry if my memory not always there, but he is definitely one of the, you know, he has a definite character about him.
Yeah.
And by the way, I did want to say something about lighting. Okay. I am going to be on my website, on my Instagram, I am kind of talking about how I did some of the lighting, how I did some of the shots, as well as some of the interviews that I did, and Robert, when we did these photos and stories. So if they are interested, they can look me up at shanesato.com, and they can find out more information there on our Instagram and Facebook. But for Moss, I have a funny story too. I'll have stories with all these guys, but we went down and photographed 3 of the veterans at a house, and they were expecting us. When I got there, I said, "Oh, let me look for a location," and so they go, "Oh, there's some nice, you know, rose bushes in the back, or over here there's some pretty flowers and things like that." And I said, "No, can I take a look at your garage?" And the owner kind of looked in shock, right? She's like, "The garage, it's full of junk, you know?" And I said, "Yeah, but I think the light is good right now." So we opened up the garage, and sure enough, the light was very soft. And I said, "We'll do it in here." And she was just mortified. But then when she realized we, you know, put a backdrop in, and we have some of the shoot on there, so you can kind of see the behind the scenes. But it's pretty funny. This is obviously not what it looked like behind the scenes in the garage, but thank you very much. But yeah, that natural light really worked well that day.
Yeah. Okay, so we have some questions coming in, so we'll get to some of the questions right now. Rod Nakanishi asks, since Shane is still shooting, is a volume 3 planned, and how can I order volumes 1 and 2?
Unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be a volume 3. I do have some remaining portraits, but for the most part, we were able to get in 160 portraits in volumes 1 and 2. And I'm very happy with that. I think that's where it's going to stay for this project. You can order the books at shanesato.com, or I'm sorry, that is my website. You can order the books at thegoforbrokespirit.com. And from the Go for Broke Spirit, you can also check out the Go for Broke Spirit Instagram and Facebook sites, which we are going to be talking more about the how we photographed and did the interviews.
And I'm sure Shane really would like your order, because if you look behind him, he would like to get his room back from all the boxes of books back there.
Yes. This is a background that you should not use for your own photographs, but it is a 4-foot-high wall of books. Yeah. We were expecting to be traveling for the past 3 or 4 months, you know, doing the pilgrimage and doing some other exhibitions and shows, but unfortunately we weren't able to do that. But you know, it's okay. We can do something like this, and this is great.
Okay, great. So Spencer asks, or says, Spencer Saito says, "Hello, is there a book available about the Lost Boys in the 442nd?" So is that the Lost Battalion you might be talking about, or is there another Lost Boys?
I'm pretty sure he's talking about the Lost Battalion, and not the movie, The Lost Boys. Yeah. I'm sure there is. I am not aware of that particularly. We are asking some questions actually about some people that they knew, if they knew some of the men in the Lost Battalion. I don't think that any survivors are left, but I think that their family does remain, and some people have been trying to find them. So again, on my website, we're going to be posting these letters that people are trying to find some of these other people. And if you have any other knowledge, we're trying to share that information. On another note, I thought this is kind of interesting, because we're sharing this information about other stories. There was one of the men, Tosh Yasutake, and when we went to France with Lawson, I showed the first book. The first book is here, and to some of the French reenactors that were with us. And lo and behold, the man is looking through and looks at a name and says something and takes off. He comes back and he shows us these dog tags. And a man, Tosh Yasutake. Wow. Turns out that this man was the same Tosh Yasutake in my book. He was a medic, and the hill that he found the dog tags was right next to the field hospital where he would have or might have worked. And we were just amazed because it had to have been the same person. And it's maybe something that, you know, maybe there's someone else that wants me, God wants me to photograph and share these stories, because not only is it's not too much of a coincidence of having the same French man find these dog tags of a man that was in my book that I photographed. And it was just amazing. We're trying to see if he might donate one of them back to the family, because Tosh passed away a few years back. But, you know, these guys, they scour these mountains for these trinkets, and they're like, you know, they're personal treasures. So we're going to see, but it's those kind of stories that I really remember and like to share.
Yeah, that is an amazing story. Okay, so we have MJ Vega actually has a couple questions here. One is, with the Nisei generation passing away more each day, how important do you feel preserving these individual stories for future generations is?
Well, that's pretty much the whole premise of my book. I really felt that this needed to be told. When I first started this series, I had no idea if it was going to be just some portraits that we're going to show in a gallery, something that I'm going to have in a future. There were no very few. Internet was fledgling for us back then, and it was something that I just felt needed to be done. So I really do hope that the next generation wants to take a look at these men in a different way, using art and personal stories. When I was growing up, I didn't like history. I didn't like going to school that much. But not that everyone else shouldn't, but you should. But for me, the arts is really what drew me to do this book. And I didn't want to make it a history book. This is not a history book. This is a portrait book. It's meant to be looked at so people can look at the art, they can see it, they can look at the personal stories, then get interested, and then go research on their own, whatever particular part they want to see, whether it be about the camps, whether it be about what they did after the war, whether it be about the World War II veterans. It all encompasses. And to me, it's very important to share these stories, because my family never told me anything. My mom, even when I started to get involved with this, really didn't tell me very much about camps, very much about what her life was. My dad, my uncles passed away before I really started talking to them about that. And I really lost that history. And for me to try and share it and to do it in a way that hopefully people might get interested in a different way through art, is really important to me. I hope that the younger generation will continue to share their stories as well.
You know, as a person that got their BA in history, it hurts when you didn't like history. But, you know, I think I really disagree with you on your book being a history book. It is actually a really good history book, because it isn't one that's just going to sit up there and lecture people and just give factual information out. It gives facts, it brings history, but it brings it to life. It allows the viewer to become more involved, emotionally involved with the history that's on the pages. And that's, I mean, think about the fact that you didn't, you know, you said you didn't like history, but your project made history come alive for you. And I think that the books do a great job of doing that. So, yeah. So, and so let's see. So MJ's Vegas. Second question is, have you personally visited any of the camps?
Yes, I have visited Minidoka, and I visited Manzanar, and I visited Poston, which I am now a board member of, and this is our Poston logo shirt here. But yeah, my mom went to Poston, so I got more involved with that. Minidoka, because I've always wanted to go there from Seattle, and Manzanar, when we would take our yearly fishing trips to Mammoth and go come on back and see the growth of that camp has been amazing. But yeah, I actually really wanted to take one of the veterans, Hirohara, who lived here in Los Angeles, who went to Manzanar. He said he never went back, and you know, I was unfortunate enough I was not able to take him, but you know, it was something that I think he would have enjoyed. I wish my mom was able to go to Poston, but she never really talked about it, even when she went. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, my mom also was at Poston. She was at Poston too, and so one year, my younger sister and I got to take her to Poston. It was just it was supposed to be a one-day road trip that turned into a two-day road trip, and just decided to go see Poston. And I'd already been there, so you know, I could find it and we could show. And so it was an amazing thing to do with her. So and I mentioned in my intro that actually I met Shane at the 2018 Minidoka pilgrimage, and I think it was actually, it may have been before the dinner, the big blowout dinner. Mm-hmm. Turf Club, and somebody had said, "Oh, that's Shane Sato. He's the guy that did the Go for Book book." And I thought, oh, I've never seen the book. I thought, oh, I've got to meet this guy. And so, you know, really, what I want to encourage people to do, it's if you have the opportunity, try to go to pilgrimages. Many of the camps now have them every year. And some of them are one-day affairs. Some of them are basically 4-day affairs. And especially the longer ones are great sources of meeting people, of finding more information. You can find information, a lot of people find information about their family that they didn't get from the family because the grandparents have passed away or great-grands have passed away. But there are people there that can help fill in some of the gaps. And for younger people, I think it's just a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about the family. Okay, we have Ken Mochizuki. Shane, do portrait photographers also have to be good psychologists to get the you want from the subject? Did being GA help in working with the Nisei vets?
I think, I don't know about psychologist is the right word, but I think you have to be able to connect with people quickly. I don't know if being JA helped. I think just my personality of trying to be energetic and outgoing when I'm doing a shoot is important. I think maybe being JA allowed me to get my foot in the door, but even when I got there, a lot of them, the people who worked at the different sites or the veterans themselves didn't really know who I was. there were always some hesitations, especially when it came to doing a portrait, and then ask them to do a portrait with a uniform on. And it's something that they just weren't used to and comfortable with. And so a lot of times, and I'll tell you a story how I did this, and working with the veterans is one thing, but getting them to come to the shoot or is another. So a lot of times I would go and try and photograph the men at one of their wine hangouts or one of their club nights, and I would sit there and try and ask them to take photos. And sometimes I would sit there for 2 hours or so, and maybe I'd get one guy interested, or sometimes I wouldn't get any interest, or someone say, I don't want to do it. And then what I found out is at each of these functions, there's always a lady that all the guys gravitate to, and they all talk to, and whatever she says goes. So I realized that, and when I went to Seattle, it would be Debbie. When I went to Hawaii, it'd be Stacy. And when when I had them on my side, then they would say, "Oh, okay," they would do it. I got much more success later on photographing when I had those ladies on my side. The other thing is that probably the past 4 or 5 years, it was a lot easier to take the photos because a lot more of them would be willing to do that. Was it their own mortality? Was it they saw the grandkids running around? I'm not sure, but because of that, it became much easier when I asked them to do the portraits. I had much better response than, let's say, 10, 12 years ago. But yeah, it definitely, like with Dick Momi, you really have to act quickly sometimes. I mean, some of these guys I was doing a shoot, and the guy said, "Shane, this guy's trying to escape. You better go get him now." You know, luckily he was a little older and, you know, on a walker, so that I could catch up to him and stop him. But otherwise, there's, you know, they just changed their mind, or they didn't want to be there, this and that. And so you really had to kind of coax them into, because overall, they're all, the feeling is that, oh, I'm not important. That guy over there is important. And then I'd go over to that guy and, oh, I'm not important. That guy over there is important. And I just run around the room and I'd get nothing done. And so you really had to make sure that they understood that it's important to do this. And that is really something that helped me get their photographs.
Okay. So next question, and I'm not sure I can really even think of trying to pronounce this name. So, but what are some takeaways for you from interacting with these Nisei veterans, especially in the context of preserving memories of war, internment, and betrayal by the government?
I think one of the general things that I've ever walked away from this is you know, fighting for like we've talked about before, fighting for a country that has their family imprisoned or their friends. Even in the men in Hawaii were obviously fighting, even though some of their friends on the mainland were incarcerated. They're very humble. They never talked bad about the government. They always felt that it was something they needed to do. They felt that if they did this, that their next generation, my life, your life, our lives here would be better. And they were right. That is something that they were proud of and was very important to them. And that humility and how they downplay it, how they say, "Oh, I'm not important. That guy over there is important." That is something which is universal through all of them.
I love the contrast when you talk about the men's humility and thinking that for your profession you photograph celebrities and models, and I just looking at that humility contrast sometimes in there. What was it like to switch for you in the shoots, to switch to those different kinds of attitudes?
You know, it's a different kind of, you know, it's a different kind of grumpiness per se. I don't know about your family, but, you know, my family, the men were a little gruff and grumpy, you know, and it's just kind of how it is. They always had a good time, but it's take a photo or do something. It's just wasn't, talk about themselves. No, that just wasn't part of it. When you work with in Hollywood, you always they're like, oh, hurry up, let's I don't want to I don't want to have time for this. Let's get it done. And these guys, it's opposite. Oh, why are you doing this for me? I'm not important. Do you really want to photograph me? It's completely different. I do have one story. Well, I have a lot of stories, but one of the guys in Hawaii that when I did the first book, we were when I was working with this lady Jane, who was always one of the ones that got the veterans as well. We were handing out some of the books to the veterans that participated. And one of the veterans goes, hey, how come I'm not in this book? And Jane goes, hey, he asked you like 3 times. And, he goes, well, I didn't know it was going to be good. And so, you never know. I mean, I never turned down a veteran that wanted to take or any portrait, is someone who wanted to do it. So I'm glad he thought it was good, and I wish I could have taken this photo. I don't remember who he was though now, but I remember that story.
Missed opportunities. So we have another question from Clement Hanami. Hi, Shane. Your photo work is amazing. Can you talk a little bit about who has influenced your style? Also, Zena Tatsugawa says hello. And by the way, Clement is my boss.
Who is Zena?
No, Clement. Clement's my
Clement.
boss.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Zena, I went to high school with and elementary school. So hi, Zena. One of my main influences is a photographer named James Fee. I worked under him for a long time. Please look him up if you ever see any books by him. Very contrasty style. I used that style for the first book, the black and white photos, where there's a lot of contrast and strength because, like I said before, there was very few Asians in general, not just Japanese, that were photographed in a way that was strong. It was always kind of weak or kind of silly or something. I didn't like that. And so I really wanted to photograph them being strong, sexy, sex appeal. And the contrasty style really appealed to me from James Fee, as well as Helmut Newton. Gosh, I'm forgetting a few of the names here, but they're all the black and white photographers, celebrity photographers that I used to really look up to. Yeah.
That is amazing. I used to work at a pro camera store in Hollywood in a previous life, and James Fee used to come in all the time. And
you know him?
We used to go out to lunch.
Was it Sammy's or?
Yeah, Pan Pacific.
Oh, Pan Pacific.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And Helmut Newton used to come in too. So
okay. I remember Helmut Newton. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So Ryan Kozudo, do you have another upcoming project planned? Oh, do you? Like, oh, Ryan. Okay, never mind. We need spaces in these things.
Well, I think, unfortunately, my only project this year was to really go and travel and do the exhibition with the books. We had a good footing with that this year, but unfortunately, as we all know, that's gone away. I'd like to get rid of some of this stuff in the background here so we can have a living room to enjoy again. But in the meantime, I think my next project is really trying to get the work in exhibitions, to have different shows, and to do more talks. So if anybody has any areas that think that may benefit a talk with this book, please let me know, because I really love to share these stories and have question and answer sessions just as this.
Oh, great. Okay, we have a couple more questions. Another one by MJ Vega. Last question for MJ. What J organizations would you recommend getting involved with? I'm writing an MA thesis on local Nisei history, and I'd like to keep a lookout for places to help at when I'm graduated.
Well, obviously, there's the NBC in Seattle, the NBN in Washington. There's also the Maui Nisei Vets for Hawaii. In Hawaii, there's also the the 100th and the 442 Club, but you know, with all the veterans gone, they're very short-staffed. There's a lot of there's not that it's not as busy as it used to be. But I definitely would consider going to the Go for Broke National Education Center here in Los Angeles. There's also the Hawaii, because the Hawaii veteran story is much different than the mainland veteran story. And the Hawaii guys will always tell you that they came first and that they should be remembered first as the 100th. And I tell that to everybody now. They pounded it in me, and I must remember that. So please don't forget to include them as well as the MIS. So 100th, 442nd, MIS.
Okay, and final question from Sheila Newland. I don't remember, where did you get the uniforms for the portraits? Did some of them wear their own uniforms? Thank you.
Well, another funny story here again. If you look closely, which I don't want you to do, a lot of these uniforms are reused over and over and over again. A lot of their own uniforms, if they had them, were too small, or that they didn't have them anymore. They'd thrown them away, they'd given them away. Many, many stories about that. A few of them did have their uniform, and that was great. They fit it, and we used it absolutely. The other ones, which was probably about 80%, we had to borrow uniforms from a few of my friends, Govan and Ken. Thank you guys. And then I purchased a few of the from these guys who make the uniforms for the particular wars. And so we used the same uniforms. We dressed it up differently. We used different props. When we went to Hawaii, they, you know, different uniforms or guns or insignias and things like that. And so we made it look a little bit different. In Photoshop, I cleaned it up quite a bit. But if you look closely, which please don't do, you'll probably notice that they are very similar. And I only used, and the uniforms are really only meant for photographic impact. If they, obviously if they're MIS, I didn't put them in a 442 uniform, but in reality, it's not historically correct. It's not meant to be. It's just for the viewer to look at that and feel that portrait. So I hope that, please forgive me if you're a history buff and you notice that the insignias are wrong or something's not right.
Okay. So are you still actively trying to get venues to take your show to, or is there just a long line now that it's not something you're really worried about right now?
No, I'm absolutely looking for different venues to show it to. And, obviously it's great to show to all the Japanese American venues, but I also would like to take this show to other areas. I was really excited to take it to Utah and Idaho, because there are places where they did not know the story. And so I really like to share this story with people who do not know about it, and share the stories of these men and of the camps and the JA experience. So yes, I'm actively looking for any places that would be interested.
Cool. So everybody who wants to know about, contact Shane on his website. Yeah, because I think that it's one thing, having lived and gone to school in the Midwest, upper Midwest for many years, it's something that a lot of times people say we never heard of it or we knew very little about it. And even then you learn it in this purely academic way. And I think that your show would help them understand these people at a more personal level, and maybe understand what they did, not as something being told to them, but they actually could feel it from your photographs. So hopefully, it will go around the country. So we've gone over again, but I just want to thank you very much for participating in this. It's just been a great experience. It gave me a chance to look through the books again and enjoy your work. So thank you very much. And
thank you, John. I want to thank everyone here who participated and watched at Tadaima. And John, it was great meeting you a couple years ago. We've been running into each other even more and more since you're now at the museum here in Little Tokyo. I hope that people will look at the books and will be inspired to do more get more interested in the 100th and 442nd and MIS. It is a very important piece of history that not a lot of people know about. And it's something that is very important to me, and I hope to continue to share it.
Great, great. Well, thank you. And so next week we have two artists. We have Naomi Shintani. Some of you may know her as Judy Shintani, and Lillian Blakey, who's a Canadian artist. And so we'll be on at the same time at 6 o'clock next week. So with that, thank you very much and goodbye.
Thanks, guys.